Welcome to this introduction to SBIR and STTR proposal writing. This webinar is sponsored by the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers headquartered at the Rutgers University Business School and by our longtime partners, the accounting firm EisnerAmper and the law firm Lowenstein Sandler. My name is Randy Harmon. A Phase 1 SBIR or STTR proposal is a feasibility study. Your goal is to demonstrate the technical, scientific, and commercial merit and feasibility of your envisioned commercial product. The deliverable to your agency upon completion of the project is most frequently a report, although some level of a prototype may be required. Be very, very careful not to over-propose. Entrepreneurs sometimes mistakenly think that offering agencies a very good deal will improve their chances of funding. However, the reverse is true, and over-proposing will hurt your credibility in the eyes of reviewers. There are two proposal components known by various names depending on the agency. The first is the technical proposal, and the second is the cost proposal. This webinar will focus on the technical proposal. The piece of advice that SBIR agency program managers most frequently offer as their most important piece of advice is to read the instructions. While at best this sounds a little offensive, if not downright demeaning, it is indeed important advice. That's because the SBIR agencies are very prescriptive in their format, content, and length requirements, and they are prescriptive differently. The National Institutes of Health, for example, go so far as to require you to select from among 4 fonts. Consequently, it is important to follow and use your targeted agency's instructions as a checklist. You will also want to write your proposal to your agency's specific evaluation criteria. The bottom line of proposal writing is that agencies expect you to be their equivalent of Burger King. The slogan of Burger King is "Have it your way." SBIR agencies expect you to serve your proposal to them their way. There are 3 common core components to the technical proposal that go by various names depending on the agency. These are identification and significance, objectives, and work plan. In addition, either as separate sections or as part of another section, agencies will typically want you to demonstrate your knowledge of the state-of-the-art or practice in the field and to discuss commercialization of the technology. If you are not specifically asked to demonstrate your knowledge of the field, I would suggest that you season or pepper sections of your proposal with appropriate references which demonstrate this knowledge. You will also be asked for a non-proprietary summary or abstract of the project, which will be published if your project is funded. In the identification and significance section of your proposal, you will identify and discuss the technical problem or opportunity that your project addresses. You will also explain why this problem or opportunity is important and why it is worthy of government R&D funding. You may also want to include important background information, which you think is essential for understanding the problem and its significance, unless this information is specifically asked for elsewhere. In the case of the National Institutes of Health, for example, until 2010, they called this section of the proposal Background and Significance. In the case of contract agencies, such as the Department of Defense, the agency will often include information in the topic abstract that will help you get started and provide you with a direction to head in. The identification and significance section will typically be 1 to 2 pages in length, unless the agency asks for additional information to be included. Scientists, engineers, and technical professionals are vulnerable to putting in too much background information at the expense of other important information. In choosing your objectives, I recommend that your starting point be the budget that you are likely to have for Phase 1, which, unfortunately, like everything else in SBIR, differs by agency. Given your budget, your objectives are the approximately 2 to 6 key tasks or groups of related tasks that, 1, are realistic to address and the most important things to accomplish in Phase 1, 2, that remove the most technical risk from the project, and 3, that if successfully completed will best demonstrate the technical feasibility of the proposed project and envisioned commercial product. Contract agencies, such as the DoD, will often tell you what they want you to accomplish in Phase 1 and Phase 2, which will serve as the foundation of your objectives. Your objectives are key to a successful proposal. In fact, it can be said that they are the most important part of your proposal because they are pervasive throughout it. First, you typically begin by introducing them in your summary abstract. You then spell them out in your objectives section and explain them as needed. You then write your work plan to achieve them. And then finally, you determine whether or not you have successfully demonstrated feasibility by whether or not you have achieved your objectives and their corresponding milestones. If your objectives aren't right, the rest of your proposal can't be right. Your objectives section should typically be approximately 1 page or less in length, unless the agency asks for additional information to be included. In addition, most agencies ask you to identify technical questions that you will have to answer to prove feasibility. Although entrepreneurs typically love to talk about their technology, very few include these questions, which can hurt their credibility. Your work plan should be written to your objectives. In the work plan, you will identify and discuss the specific tasks that you are going to undertake to complete each objective. You can begin with a brief introduction and overview of the work plan, although it is not necessary and may most appropriately be written last, after you have finished writing out the specifics of your plan. I then suggest that you copy and paste your objectives from the objectives section and begin discussing your research design and methods for completing each objective. What can be very useful to make your proposal more readable is to break down each objective into roughly 2 to 6 specific tasks that you will complete in order to achieve each objective. All agencies except the National Institutes of Health expect to see lots of detail in the work plan regarding the basics of writing that most of us were taught in elementary school. Reviewers essentially want to know who is going to do what, where, when, how, and why. This should typically be the most substantive and detailed section of the proposal and account for at least a third and up to a half or more of your page total. Agencies expect you to prove that you and your team know what to do to complete the project and how to go about doing it. The saying that a good picture is worth 1,000 words was coined with the SBIR program in mind. However, be sure that the picture enhances readers' understanding beyond what is written in the text. I sometimes struggle to understand pictures, graphics, and tables which ultimately tell me nothing more beyond what was in the narrative. One of the things I often incorporate in proposals to enhance reviewers' understanding is a task table. A task table has several columns, typically beginning with a listing of each task for each objective. The next column will specify the range of the weeks of the project during which the task will be completed. The third column will identify the project team member responsible for the task. In addition, in cases where a project is completed at multiple locations, you can add a column identifying where the task will be completed. I often suggest making such a table the centerpiece of the proposal and wrapping the rest of the narrative around it and referencing it as appropriate. A task table can be particularly helpful in writing NIH proposals according to their new 7-page format. A task table can provide a lot of detail in a small amount of space. Entrepreneurs submitting to NIH can specify the individual task to be performed in a task table in the approach section of the research plan. They can then simply write their narrative and discuss their research design and methods for each objective as a whole, without discussing each individual task. This will enable them to comply with the page limit. Some agencies are much more specific and prescriptive than others regarding what they want in each section of the proposal. It can be helpful and build your credibility to follow some of the guidelines of the more prescriptive agencies in writing proposals for less prescriptive agencies. A good example of this can be found in what I call potential problems and alternative tactics. I suggest in this subsection that you identify 2 to 4 things that are most likely to potentially go wrong and how you will respond. While this discussion is requested by the NIH, it is not asked for by either the DoD or NSF, although I think it can be a credibility builder in all proposals. Through the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers, I'm available to New Jersey entrepreneurs as a no-cost, one-stop resource to assist them in pursuing financing for science and technology-based businesses. I can provide assistance in competing for angel financing, venture capital, and state financing opportunities, as well as SBIR and STTR grants and contracts, and in preparing the required business plans, funding proposals, and investor presentations. I also publish a near-monthly newsletter that includes a schedule of current SBIR and STTR opportunities and other information of interest to SBIR entrepreneurs. In addition, the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers will sponsor SBIR proposal writing training seminars throughout the year. These programs will be announced on this website and in my newsletter. This concludes this introduction to SBIR and STTR proposal writing. I hope that as you begin writing your proposal, you find the pointers offered here to be useful. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.